and how labels can actually make us sometimes feel like a mess. Okay, what do I do next? The frustration, everything that comes with. And the other part that comes with that is criticism. There are people that are going to agree with you, and there are people that are going to disagree with you about how you do things in life. But let's say, for instance, that when you are thinking about how you want your life versus how somebody else wants their life. When I was with a man once, that when I first met him, his entire car and even his home was a mess. It was so messy that I was like, okay, I got to do something to fix this. And I wanted to be the fix-it person. And people insist upon labeling each other or even labeling a way of life. Perhaps we don't know what it is that we really want or where we are supposed to be looking for those kind of answers of what words we are supposed to use to call them. So when you decide to actually create your own life, you try and find what works for you, what helps you feel good. When I was with that man, he decided that his Feng Shui was the mess. Because for some reason, even when it was messy, then he could find everything. Because he knew where he last left it. That was his Feng Shui, or his mess. But those that also know Feng Shui, they end up saying OCD. So, what is Feng Shui? Is it the mess? Or is it how way of life? Or is it OCD? OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder. So let's say that people judge it and they have to say, well, that person is very obsessive. Well, true, but some people come with it obsessive compulsive disorder. They actually come from it from a direction of positivity even. But then let's say that someone else has a negative experience with somebody using the word OCD. And they have to fix every little thing. Well, who's the one who really has the OCD then? And let's say that there was a mirror image for a moment. You saw somebody with a mess, yet you aren't bothered by the fact that they have a mess, but some people are. Let's say that one of the people that had an issue with that decided to stand right in front of that mirror and be criticizing that person and be telling them and stuff how bad and wrong they are because of the way that they live their life. Now, the mess is just an amplification of where you are at in life. How you criticize somebody or even create your own home can also be where you're at in life. Depends on how you want to look at it. But then you also have even a different thing beyond that. Let's say that in a brief moment, you were to choose to be unconditional with whatever it was that was in front of you. And you wanted somebody to even see just how clean your place was. And maybe that's why. But in either the case, the reasoning behind it is still up to that person, that individual. But Feng Shui, or OCD or the mess is all it is a way of life. Now, you may not agree with that way of life, or you may agree with it completely. So, when you want to fix somebody, let's say that it's just their home, and you have the mother who wants to come in and criticize the home. And you're sitting there going, I don't want you criticizing my home. But you're keeping that thought to yourself. Are you wearing a mask at that point in time? And deciding to just keep quiet. Sometimes we stay quiet because of different reasons. Staying quiet can mean meditation. Staying quiet can also be observing. Staying quiet can also be that the person is suppressing all of that anxiety, all that fear, all that doubt, that they're just not perfect enough. In the meantime, you're still dealing with the person right in front of you who is criticizing you and saying how bad and wrong you are. Isn't it life what we make it? Isn't life what we decide? Or is it something that we're letting somebody else decide? Things work for us the way they work for us. Why? That is what we are here to talk about today. In a brief moment, let's say that your place is perfectly immaculate and clean compared to mine. And let's say another person is watching this and theirs is completely messy and they're watching this. Which part do they agree with? When I started out on my journey, there was times that I would keep things clean, I would organize them, but then there was times that I just couldn't keep up with the mess. And other times there was just too much to deal with, to where I would give up entirely and not clean anything. But I was allowing people to push me too hard. I was allowing people to criticize me, and that was too much. Especially when I was a child, and I would be at home, and my mom would come in and she'd start criticizing the way that I was taking care of my room. But here's the funny thing. Then I would go into my little brother's room, and I would clean and organize his room in the middle of the night. Why? Because, well, she wanted something clean and something organized. But then my little brother would complain about, don't touch my stuff. That is not yours. Don't touch it. Every time you come in here and clean and organize and stuff, I can't find anything again. Then she would get angry at me and try and tell me, no, you need to clean your room. And then I would sit there and I'd be trying to do it, and they would take me hours on end. But why? Because I didn't want to be doing that. And I was a very stubborn child. Stubbornness can get in our way of having happiness, but it also is there for a reason and a purpose. Feng Shui is connected to everything and everyone, whether they choose to see it or not, or believe that it even exists. That's the funny part about it. You see how one person lives high and rich and everything else and said, well, that's the way he chose to live life. Now, if he's not liking the result that he's getting, well, then it's up to him to change it. But he's learning at a different pace than the individual who's doing their home in a specific order that is there to say, oh, well, I want to organize it this way. But he's still at the top of a company. He's still frustrated about whatever's not working. So does he want a better feng shui with the board of directors or within himself, but doesn't know it? And is he going to look at that for a moment and go, well, you're wrong. Or why do you always have to be right? It's not that I have to be, it's that I end up being right. What do I say about this to him? It's not because that I'm necessarily wanting to be right always in that moment. When I was with this man, he had his own way of doing things. But because of the space that we were both in, we couldn't respect each other's space very well. We were carrying a baggage with us, a backpack, so to speak, that was weighing us down. I've learned to release what I don't need from the backpack that I had that was a bunch of rocks. I still have a lot to go. We all do. But what I realized was that he wasn't letting go of the rocks in his backpack. So he still wasn't getting what he needed to move forward. Now, people will sometimes argue with me and say, but that's not a need. And I'm like, or is it? The reason I bring this to anybody's attention is because I've been that person. I've been the person criticizing on the other side, but I've also had the criticizing mother. I've also had the criticizing father. I've also had the criticizing dad and mom. I've had different people throughout my life. So when are we going to stop and realize to trust ourselves and trust that we know what is best for us? That we know what is going to help us move forward individually. But once we learn what helps us to move forward, it is then that we can stop and teach somebody and say, look at this for a moment. What works for you? Does it work for you to have someone criticizing you in your life? Does it work for someone to be telling you how messy of a life you have, or that you're analyzing and being OCD all the time? Or would you rather believe that there is simply just a way of life that helps you to move forward? Which one feels best to you? Which one feels good to you? I invite you to take a look at the one that actually feels good, because that's how you're going to move forward. Sometimes you have a job that's not working for you, and you think that sometimes you start criticizing yourself and start saying, it's because of me. Well, it's not the job that necessarily works for you if it's not really working for you. Sometimes, yeah, you need to change your attitude and change the feng shui that way. And that's why I asked you, which one feels best to you? Attitude is the feng shui. What works for you? And other times, it's not just the attitude. Other times, it is simply that things just need to shift and change. But some of us fear change because we've had an experience that ends up telling us that we're bad and wrong. that we've made the incorrect decision. So what would it look like if you were to make the correct decision for you? This is what I do. I help people to look outside the box. I help people to expand their mind and their consciousness so that they actually can see that there is an alternate route to being happy. And those that continue to criticize you, don't let them continue to criticize you. They're choosing not to be happy. But you get to choose to be happy. You get to choose to release what no longer serves you and shift to a different doorway, shift to a different path. And find what works for you. The art of Feng Shui is very tricky. It can be used in many different ways throughout life. At times when I'm doing what works for me, to be releasing the weight that I'm carrying, ironically, things start working again that way. But sometimes, for a while, I end up being that stubborn person who wants to sit in my mess because it's what works for me at the moment. And then once it no longer works for me, I get to decide what to do with it at that point in time. My brain doesn't function the way that everybody else's does. My brain. But my spirit knows what it looks like when it is working. My brain will start to have fears and I'll start stuttering like I was just a moment ago. But when I turn to my spirit and I feel and I allow myself to connect to what really is working for me in that moment, I remain calm. I remain more present. So I invite you to look within and connect with the Feng Shui, the art of life, your way. Because otherwise you won't get very far. And if you're having a hard time believing that you're worth that time and effort, which one feels good? Does it feel good to believe that you're worth that time, that effort? Or does it feel bad? That is where it ends up being up to you. It is your decision. Know that you are loved. Big Bear Airheads. Namaste.